The galaxy is torn asunder by war so constant and unending that not even the sands of time can measure their longevity. There is nothing to savour, for even the grandest of victories is forgotten in the constant cacophony of war. In this dark void of a galaxy, mankind is splintered and dying, ancient species kill and maim, and unthinkable threats thirst for death. It is in this setting that this wargame takes place. The Weeping Stars Tabletop Wargame is like other wargames you have likely enjoyed, but different in many key areas. Weeping Stars is a turn-based, alternating action and dice rolling tabletop wargame. Unlike many other such systems, you only need to read one page of rules before you can start playing. This video will teach you everything you need to know to get started on the battlefield with your first engagement. What you will need to get started is this: a flat area to play on, a tape measure in inches, some die, some miniatures, and an opponent. Then you will need to select a faction. Here are a few of the factions available. The Chevaliers are chivalrous protectors of mankind, being their gleaming guards. Anathema to reality, the realm-born left mortality behind and served the realm in destroying reality. The Second Empire is a democratic state where the front lines are filled with humanity fighting for their families and homes. Enslavers and scientists all, the dendrites will do anything to cure their species of suffering, regardless of the cost. All of these factions can be found in the faction documents. You can download the PDF files from my mini factory. For this you will need the main rulebook and the faction document. Opuses contain more lore, painting and a unique narrative system, but are not needed to play the faction. For this example engagement, the Second Empire and the Chevaliers will be fighting in Engagement 1, War of the Vanguard. Here is the engagement, 30 inches by 30 inches, which is the smallest engagement size. This is the circumstance stage. Before starting an engagement, all players roll off. The loser of the roll-off deploying the first unit. The Second Empire roll higher than the Chevaliers, and so the Chevaliers must deploy the first unit. For this engagement, all armies start with 3 force, but the starting force is often higher. It can be any number, so long as all players agree on it. In the main rulebook there are recommended starting force figures to try out. Force is the currency of war. You spend it to get more units or to use special tactics known as ploys. You gain force throughout the battle at the end of each turn. Any unspent force is carried over throughout the engagement, so you can save them up and use them later if you don't want to use them right away. Since the Chevalier army lost the roll-off, they must deploy the first unit, and must therefore select a unit from their faction document. On the first page you will find the core units of each faction. Really dependable and useful units. The Chevalier army has 3 force, and when you deploy a unit you must subtract the force cost from your army's force. You can only spend force that you have, so you cannot, for example, deploy a halberd with a cost of 4 force if you only have 3 force. A unit of grenadiers is chosen to be deployed. Looking at their data card, this unit has 2 sizes, 10 models or 20 models, costing 3 force if it has 10 models, or 6 if it has 20 models. In this case, the Chevalier army cannot afford a larger size and can only deploy the 10-man strong unit. This unit must be deployed wholly within the Primus drop zone. The Primus drop zone will be labeled on your engagement map. It is best to keep each model within 1 inch of another from its unit. Following this, the Chevalier army is down to 0 force. After that, the Second Empire must deploy a unit. They choose to deploy an infantry squad, which costs 2 force. This leaves them with 1 force that they can keep for the coming battle. When you deploy this unit you will find that it has multiple ore weapons. This means that each model must choose one of the ore weapons to have. Normally each model can have whatever weapon it wants, but the infantry squad has a rule. All models must have the same weapon, meaning you select one of these ore weapons and every model gains that weapon. No player has enough force to continue deploying units, but if they did, it would then be the Chevalier army's turn before alternating back to the Second Empire, until no player could deploy any more units. Following this, all players roll off. The winner of the roll-off becomes the active player. If the roll is a tie, like here, the player who lost the previous roll-off becomes the active player. This means that the Chevalier becomes the active player since they lost the first roll-off. The first turn has begun. Turn 1, Strategic Phase. At the start of the first strategic phase, all players must select an agenda, how they want to win. Each agenda has a condition to be scored, such as the bloodletting agenda that needs an army to kill 3 units to score it. Each time an agenda is scored, your army gains 1 domination. Reaching 5 at the end of its turn is how you win the engagement. Or it can be a draw if all sides manage to reach it in that turn. An agenda can only be scored once per turn, except for the progressive agendas which can be scored multiple times each turn. You cannot change your agenda after you have chosen yours, and you can only get domination from your agenda, so choose carefully. You also do not have to tell your opponent about your chosen agenda or your current domination, but if you want to, you're free to do so. For simplicity's sake, in this example, both armies will choose bloodletting, the easiest to understand agenda. Kill. In this phase, routing rolls are also made. They will be explained later. Turn 1, Movement Phase. In the movement phase, you can move your units. But how? The active player must pick the first unit. They can select one of their units to move. Each unit has multiple movement types it can do when you select it. These can be seen on its data card. Readied R allows a unit to move whilst maintaining full battle effectivity. Steady S makes the unit move faster but with a cost to their damage output. Flank F. This is the fastest a unit can move, but their damage will be severely impacted later. Hindered H. These moves must be used when moving on terrain, which causes their damage potential to be reduced. Some units do not have all the moves on their data card. If this is the case, they cannot make that type of move. If you do not want to move a unit, you still select it and have it move readied, but you do not move it. It moves 0 inches. If you decide to do this, it cannot later be activated and moved. Regardless of how much each model moved, the unit, and every model in it, counts as having made the chosen move. The Grenadiers decide to move steady S forward. This means that each model in the unit can move up to 8 inches in any direction, so long as the models never float. Each model must end its move within 1 inch of at least one model from its own unit. This is known as unit coherency. Models cannot move through terrain or models from any other unit, but can move freely through models in its own unit. The Grenadiers have now moved, and cannot be selected to move again this turn. Then the Second Empire can move one of their units. They decide to move their infantry squad over this hill, and so must move hindered, and they can only move 4 inches. Neither player have any further units to move, but if they did, it would be back to the active player to select one of their units to move, alternating thereafter. With no units left to move, the acquisition phase begins. Turn 1. Acquisition Phase. In the acquisition phase, your army can aim their weapons, slew their turrets, and ready their blades on a unit. Your units can only attack enemy units that are acquired. The first thing to check is if an enemy unit is within 2 inches of any of your units. If this is the case, they automatically become acquired. Here that is not yet the case, so the next step happens. The active player selects an enemy unit and rolls a die for it. This is called an acquisition roll. The Chevalier decides to roll for the infantry squad. This roll succeeds if it rolls 8 or more, difficult without any bonuses. These bonuses you get from this table. Starting at the top, is the infantry squad visible to one of the Chevalier army's units? Yes, since an unobstructed line from a model in both units can be drawn to one another. Because of this, you add 1 to the roll. The next is if the unit is 50% or more visible. We do this by judging if a line to at least half the models in the roll for units can be drawn from any of your models. And so you do not add 1 for that criterion. A model in the infantry squad is within 30 inches of one of the chevalier models, and so another one is added. The second empire unit is not within 15 inches of a chevalier unit, and so you do not add 1 for that criterion. The infantry squad has not been scouted once, and not 2 times or more, thus no extra modifiers are added from these. The unit has not either been acquired before. Added to this roll makes it 8 or above, meaning that the infantry squad is now acquired. It is recommended to place an acquire token next to the unit. After that, the second empire army gets to pick an enemy unit, and here the unit of grenadiers is also acquired. Each unit can only be selected once per acquisition phase. If you fail to roll 8 or higher, the unit is not acquired this turn and cannot be attacked in the following targeting phase. If there were more units, then the active player would select another unit, alternating back and forth. A unit stops being acquired at the start of the next control phase, and so you will need to reacquire them in each acquisition phase. With every unit rolled for, it is time for the Turn 1, Targeting phase. The targeting phase is split into 3 initiative steps. First is the Initiative 1 phase, where only weapons with an initiative I of 1 can be used. The active player selects one of their units to attack. The Chevalier army chooses their grenadiers. They have weapons with an initiative of 1, but cannot use them and would prefer to use their other weapons instead. A model can only attack with 1 weapon each targeting phase. Their activation in this initiative step is skipped. The infantry squad does not either want to use their initiative 1 weapons. Both players then declare that they do not want to use any initiative 1 weapons. But if a player still had initiative 1 weapons they want to use whilst the enemy had none, they can attack with their units one after another. With no initiative 1 weapons to use, the initiative 2 phase starts. Here, the active player chooses a unit to attack. Now, however, the grenadiers can use their 1-inch rifles since they have an initiative I of 2. That unit must select a valid target for its weapon. A valid target is a unit who has at least one of their models within the weapon's range, is also visible to the weapon's bearer, and is also acquired. When drawing line of sight, you can ignore the attacking unit's models when drawing visibility. The grenadiers open fire on the infantry squad. 6 grenadiers have a valid target, and thus 6 models from the unit attack them, selecting their 1-inch rifles. Each 1-inch rifle has a volume, V, of 2, which would normally mean that each weapon rolls 2 hit rolls. However, this unit moved steady, and so must decrease their volume by 1, meaning that each weapon only rolls a single hit roll. For this hit roll, a d6, to be successful, it needs to beat the target unit's resistance. This target unit is a soft unit. You can see that it has a soft resistance, SR. This means that you use the weapon's soft damage against it. The target unit has a SR, soft resistance, of 6+, which means that for a hit roll to succeed against them, it must roll a 6 or higher. The soft damage is added to the hit rolls, and these are the die that manage to score a 6 or higher. These are the successful hit rolls. If the target instead had a hard resistance, it would be a hard unit, and you would instead add the weapon's hard damage to the hit roll. After you have rolled the hit rolls, the enemy unit must remove one of their models for each successful hit rolls made against them. Yet there is more to it. For a model to be removed, known as being slain, it must be a valid target for the weapon. If the model has a base size of 50mm or more, or if the model doesn't have a base at all, then it remains as a ruined model. It becomes terrain that can block line of sight, cannot be moved through, but it is slain and can no longer be used in battle. The grenadiers are now done attacking, yet their weapons have used up some precious ammunition. These weapons have the limited 3 trait on their 1-inch rifle, meaning they have enough ammo for 3 attacks. Each model that just attacked loses 1 use of that ammunition, and so place a die marker next to them. With their attacks finished, the Grenadier unit and all its models cannot attack again this phase. Now it is the Second Empire's time to attack, and they choose the infantry squad to attack with. Since no models in the unit have visibility, there are none that have a valid target, and so the unit cannot attack and their activation is skipped. If there were other units, it would alternate similar to the Initiative 1 step. Lastly, the Initiative 3 phase comes, but no units have any weapons with Initiative 3. If these units did have an Initiative 3 weapon, they could not attack since they have already attacked previously. Turn 1, Control phase. All acquired units are no longer acquired. If you are using markers, flip it but keep it around the unit. The engagement is split into 5 control zones, 4 being each quarter and the last being 6 inches from the center of the engagement. Each army counts how many models they have wholly within each zone. The army with the most models in a zone controls it. A model is wholly within a range when every part of the model's base is inside the range or zone. Once a zone is controlled, it remains under your control until an enemy controls it, meaning that none of your models need to be in a control zone to continue controlling it. If an uncontrolled zone has an equal number of models from all armies, then no side controls it. But if a controlled zone has an equal number of models from all armies, then the army that controls it retains control of that zone. Some units have the Presence ability, such as the Grenadiers with their Presence 2 ability. This ability means that each model in the Grenadier unit counts as 2 models in this phase for determining control of a zone. Once a zone is captured, it can be helpful to put down a marker so you know which army controls a zone at any given time. After the control phase is finished, the first turn ends. All armies gain 6 force, meaning that the Chevaliers have 6 force and the Second Empire have 7. The next active player is then rolled up, and the Second Empire becomes the new active player. Turn 2, Strategic phase. In the strategic phase, as alluded to earlier, routing rolls are made first. Units cannot be fully fearless, and in this galaxy there is plenty to fear, and so units need to pass these tests to continue fighting. The active player selects a unit from the army and makes a routing roll for it. The Second Empire selects their 1 unit, the infantry squad. You roll a d6 and add 1 for each criteria the unit fulfills. It needs to roll equal to or higher than the unit's highest morale, M, characteristic for it to rout. The unit has lost 3 models, so add 1 to the roll. But 3 is not half or more of 10, so the second criteria is not fulfilled. The Chevaliers control more zones than the Second Empire do, and so add another 1 to the roll. Lastly, the Second Empire did not manage to score their agenda last turn, which means that another 1 must be added. This roll is then 7 or more, which means that the unit routs. It must try to escape the battlefield, but can still attack normally. This will be explained more in detail later. If the roll is not higher than morale, then it no longer routs, or it has passed the routing test if it is not already routing. The Chevaliers, stoic, pass the test on their Grenadiers. If there were more units, then the active player would again have to choose a unit, alternating like that until all units have been rolled for. One special part of each faction is their faction rule, which majorly augments how they play and battle. Each faction has one, written at the top of its faction document. The Chevaliers have their faction rule that allows them in each strategic phase to pick to either get rerolls against soft units or against hard units. The Chevaliers choose to gain the bonus against soft units. Following that, it is the end of the strategic phase, and now new units can be deployed. The active player begins by selecting a unit, in this case the tank N1, and deploys it wholly within their Primus or Secundus drop zone, you can only deploy in the secundus drop zone from the second turn onwards. Then, the next player deploys a unit. This alternates until no one wants to or can deploy any more units. Turn 2. Movement phase. In the movement phase, when you select a routing unit to move, it must move steady, directly towards your army's closest drop zone and as many inches as possible. If any models end their move within a drop zone, they are slain. If a model in a routing unit cannot move steady, it is also slain. The routing unit can still attack, be targeted, acquired, and can control zones, but all of its weapons become initiative 3, and they will always subtract 1 from their volume since they moved steady. This soft unit has gotten within 2 inches of an enemy unit, and must move hindered if it wants to move at all. Hard units, such as this tank N1, can still move however they want, even whilst within 2 inches of an enemy unit. In fact, hard units can decide to force their way forward, in which case they must move hindered and their models are pushed forward, causing the enemy to give way to them. Turn 2. Acquisition phase. The Chevaliers have deployed a lance which has the scout ability. This means that it selects a visible enemy unit that becomes scouted. They choose the tank N1. When rolling to acquire the tank N1, it is only partially visible to the Grenadiers, but you can choose instead to draw line of sight from the lance, which can see the full enemy unit. The daring maneuvers of the lance has caused it to be within 15 inches of the tank N1, and so all but the double scouting criterion are met by the Chevaliers. Turn 2. Targeting phase. At the start of the targeting phase, the lance can use its wayward ability to move up to X inches in any direction. This it uses to duck behind cover. Later, the tank N1 opens fire with its battle cannon. This weapon has the ruin trait. This means that it works a little bit differently. First, you take out the marker that corresponds to the ruin trait, 2-inch radius in this case, and place it anywhere within the weapon's range and line of sight. The marker then scatters. This means that you roll 1d6 for each board edge and move it towards that board edge as many inches as you roll. If the marker is placed within 2 inches of an acquired unit, it only scatters d3 inches instead of d6. Any model within the marker is hit by the weapon. This means that friendly models as well as enemies can be hit by the weapon, even if that luckily did not happen here. Some units have multiple weapons that can use ruin, but instead of doing multiple markers per model that scatter, you just roll up one and each model uses that to determine its hits. These Grenadiers have flanked, which means that their weapons must subtract 2 from their volume, which would normally mean that they would have no attack. However, using the Rapid Dominion ploy, all weapons in that unit become rapid, meaning that it removes one of the penalties from flanking. This means that the unit of Grenadiers can still fire even though they flanked. Ploys like these are powerful strategies that can help your units in battle, yet they cost force to use. The Rapid Dominion ploy costs 1 force to use. All ploys are unique to each faction, and they can be found in their faction documents after the unit cards. A unit of Grenadiers boldly attacked the tank N1, but in the way is an infantry squad unit. If a unit targets an enemy unit, but another unit, friend or foe, is intervening, you have to subtract 1 from the hit roll. This, however, does not occur if the height difference is large enough so that a clean line can be drawn over the intervening unit. This battle is now yours to complete. There are many rules and abilities that you can look up during your battle, with many things to try out when you have grown comfortable with the base rules. I hope you enjoy the battles to come. Check back here or over on my Minifactory for updates and fresh versions. Take care, Lucas with a C.